Close your eyes for just a second. You look at the bags in your cart, milk, eggs, a pack of chicken, and you realize you didn't buy anything fun. You didn't buy a treat. You just bought what you needed to survive another week. And yet, the total is higher than your car payment used to be. You feel like you're running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster, but the floor is made of sand. You're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You're skipping the nights out. You're doing everything right. And yet, you're still falling behind. I want you to sit with that frustration, that quiet, burning anger that says, this isn't how it was supposed to be. Because that anger is your subconscious finally realizing that you aren't the one failing. You're being hunted. I'm looking you in the eye right now to tell you the most important thing you'll hear this year. You are not crazy. You are not bad with money, and you are not failing your family. What you are feeling is a systemic, calculated extraction of your life force. When we turn on the news and see wars breaking out, missiles over cities, tanks in the mud, global chaos, we are conditioned to feel a sense of collective tragedy. We are told that we are all in this together, that war destroys the economy. But that is a lie. Wealth is never destroyed. It is simply transferred. Think about that. If I burn a $100 bill, the value doesn't just vanish into the universe. In a debt-based system, that value moves. It moves from your shrinking savings account, from your grocery budget, and from your children's future, and it flows with terrifying efficiency straight into the vaults of the largest financial institutions on this planet. By the end of this video, I'm going to tear the veil off this invisible machine. I'm going to show you exactly how global conflict is used as a vacuum to suck the wealth out of your pocket. And more importantly, I'm going to show you how to build a fortress so strong that they can never touch your security again. Let's look at the numbers because numbers don't have emotions. Over the last few years, as supply chains snapped and inflation tore through the middle class, a miracle happened on Wall Street. While you were deciding which bill to skip this month so you could afford gas to get to work, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Citigroup reported the highest, most staggering profits in the history of human banking. We're not talking about a good year. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars in pure net profit. At the exact same moment their profits hit the moon, U.S. consumer credit card debt crossed $1 trillion for the first time in history. Think about those two numbers side by side. $1 trillion of debt for the people, tens of billions of profit for the banks. That isn't a coincidence. That is a balanced ledger. Their profit is your debt. Your struggle is their quarterly growth. How does a global crisis that breaks the backs of hard-working people make a bank infinitely richer? You've been sold the same boat myth since the day you opened your first savings account. The myth says we are all one economy. If there's a war, we all suffer. If there's a recession, we all lose. And look, Wall Street isn't in your boat. They own the water. They control the tide. When you're bailing water out of your tiny wooden rowing boat with a plastic cup, they're sitting on a $500 million super yacht that is specifically designed to stay stable in a storm. In fact, they like the storm, because the storm is what pushes the small boats to the bottom so they can scavenge the wreckage. If you don't understand the mechanics of how they do this, you will spend the rest of your life blaming yourself for a game that was rigged against you before you were even born. Let's break down the chain reaction. The first domino is always the conflict. War leads to an oil spike, always. When a missile flies in the Middle East or Eastern Europe, the world panics. Oil prices skyrocket. And you might think, okay, gas is $5 a gallon, that sucks, but I'll just drive less. But you're missing the bigger picture. Oil isn't just fuel. Oil is the blood of every single thing you touch. Think about the tomato on your sandwich. That tomato was planted by a diesel tractor. It was grown using petroleum-based fertilizers. It was harvested by diesel machines. It was packaged in petroleum-based plastic. It was shipped 1,200 miles in an 18-wheeler, burning 200 gallons of diesel. When war drives up the cost of energy, the cost of existence goes up. Economists call this supply shock inflation. I call it a survival tax. Your paycheck stays the same, but the cost of your life jumps by 20 or 30%. Without buying a single new thing, you are suddenly 30% poorer. So inflation is running hot, you're hurting, the public is angry. This is when the Federal Reserve, the manager of the money, steps in to fix it. But they only have one real tool in their toolbox. They raise interest rates. The theory is simple. If they make borrowing money painfully expensive, you'll stop spending. If you stop spending, demand drops. If demand drops, prices have to come down. But here is the betrayal. This is the part that should make your blood boil. The Federal Reserve doesn't deal with you. They don't have a branch in your town. The people who actually enforce those higher interest rates on your life are your commercial banks. And they use a cold mathematical mechanic called net interest margin, commonly known as the spread. Think about how unfair this is. When the Fed raises rates, your bank moves at literal lightning speed to charge you more. Your credit card interest jumps from 16% to 24% overnight. Your adjustable mortgage payments spike by $400 a month. Your auto loan becomes a weight around your neck. But what happens to your savings account? What happens to that money you've been good enough to save? It stays stuck at 0.01%. Think about the sheer naked audacity of that. They take your money and they pay you effectively zero for the privilege of using it. But the second you need to borrow that same money back to survive, the inflation they helped create, they charge you 24%. They keep that massive 24% difference in the middle. When the world is in crisis, that spread becomes a canyon. They are legally, systematically skimming the wealth off a global panicking population. They are turning your survival into their record-breaking dividend. That's why they have the marble floors and the glass skyscrapers, while you're checking the price of generic peanut butter. They aren't better at business. They just own the toll booth on the only road you're allowed to walk. The shame of survival debt. This is the part that breaks my heart, because during a crisis, this math trap becomes a physical weight. Your expenses are rising, your income is flat, you've cut the subscriptions, you've stopped eating out, you've done everything the gurus told you to do, but you still have to feed your kids, you still have to keep the heat on. So you do what they want you to do. You borrow. And there's so much shame attached to debt in our society. We treat debt like a moral failing. We treat it like you're lazy or irresponsible. But I know the truth. I've seen the data. Most people in this country aren't going into debt for Gucci bags or luxury watches. They're going into debt for groceries. They're going into debt for car repairs so they don't lose their jobs. They're using credit cards as life rafts. And the banks, they love it. They sit back and watch desperate people reach for that life raft, and then they charge them the highest interest rates in history for the privilege of not drowning. Think about the math. If you have a $5,000 balance at 24%, you are paying $1,200 a year just in interest. That is $100 a month. That is $100 stolen directly from your grocery budget, stolen from your kids' shoes, stolen from your peace of mind, and handed directly to a billionaire CEO who doesn't even know your name. That isn't a money mistake. That is systemic extraction. You aren't failing. You are being harvested. Take a deep breath for me. I know this is heavy. I know it feels like the walls are closing in. Sometimes learning how the world actually works can feel like a punch to the ribs. But I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this to wake you up. Because once you can see the vacuum, you can step out of its path. You do not have to be the victim of this math. You can change how you play this game starting today. All right, enough agitation. Let's talk about self-defense. Let's build your fortress. If you want to stop being the fuel for their profit engine, you have to follow these 4 pillars. Pillar 1, stop giving them your money for free. If your life savings or your emergency fund is sitting in a traditional savings account at a mega bank, you are literally handing them a weapon to use against you. You need to move your money this week. Look into high-yield savings accounts or short-term U.S. Treasury bills. These options actually pay you the high interest rates that the Federal Reserve sets. If the Fed says money is worth 5%, why are you letting a bank give you 0.01% and pocket the other 4.99%? That is your money. Demand that it works for you. Pillar 2. Crush variable debt like it's a fire in your kitchen. During inflation, interest rates stay high. That 24% credit card is a financial emergency. I see people trying to invest in the stock market while carrying credit card debt. Stop it. There is no investment on earth, not crypto, not real estate, not tech stocks, that guarantees a 24% return. But paying off that credit card does. Focus every single spare dollar on killing that variable debt. Once that weight is off your chest, the spread stops working against you. Pillar 3. Move from a consumer to an owner. When wars happen, governments print money to pay for them. That means the cash in your pocket is guaranteed to be worth less tomorrow. The wealthy survive this by owning hard assets, stocks, real estate, or your own businesses. These things naturally rise in value as the money supply expands. You don't need to be rich to start. Buying $50 of an S&P 500 index fund is how you start building an ark for your family that inflation cannot sink. Be the person who owns the company that raises the prices, not just the person paying them. Pillar 4. Vote with your deposits. Consider moving your daily banking to a local credit union. Credit unions are non-profit. They're owned by the members, by people like you. They don't have a board of billionaires trying to squeeze you for overdraft fees to buy a third yacht. They offer better rates, lower fees, and they treat you like a human being, not a data point on a spreadsheet. We can't control what happens on the global stage. We can't stop the wars, and we can't control the Federal Reserve. But we can control our own households. War doesn't just destroy wealth, it redistributes it. But now that you know how the vacuum works, you can step out of its path. You were working too hard to let a broken system steal your peace of mind. Protect your wealth. Take care of your family. Remember, financial education is the ultimate form of self-defense. I'm so glad you're here learning with me. Leave a comment below if this resonated with you. I'll see you in the next video.